How's it going, dudes? The board game world is populated with titles of all shapes and sizes, so in order to get your game to stand out, you'll want to give it an eye-catching theme that will bring in those customers. Or if you're out of ideas, just default to poop. A board game's theme gives a game life. It's what transforms it from a bland board with pieces into a mystical journey through a living nightmare. The theme of a game will play a major part in whether it will be a success or not. For example, I don't think Coup would have been as big of a hit if it was based around a homeowners association. This importance makes seeing a game with genuinely awful theming even more special, because you know a ton of corporate time and money went into the decision of Dog taking a crap. Doggy Doo, also known as Cackle Dackle to the Germans, is a game that sees players compete to be the first to collect 3 doos on their shovel to win. To play this masterpiece, you must first feed the dog, which will then let you roll the dice to pump the leash and hope that one of your pumps drops the poo onto your shovel. I recall seeing tons of commercials for this product and thinking, that's really weird. Apparently that line of thinking was wrong because the general public went, "Oh, poop dog!" and just tossed money at this thing. Fecal Fido sold like crazy, bringing in enough doggy dough to warrant not only an improved re-release, but a spin-off Corgi edition. Thank goodness, this guy was really starting to weird me out. Ad time! No, not a sponsorship, it's our next game. Advertising. Don't you just love ads? When you tune into a show, you really just want to see the ads, right? Well, now you can play a whole board game based around ads. Advertising is the 1988 trivia game where you try to match advertising slogans and jingles to their products to be the first to advance to the top of the corporate ladder. A board game centered around seeing what advertising campaigns worked on you sounds like a treat, but don't forget this baby hits you with the twofer. The game itself is an advertisement for these brands, as you are trying to remember what slogans go with each product, and with 2,100 different slogans and 8,400 different products to choose from, I think this might be the most tightly packed marketing ploy I've ever seen. But marketing ploys dressed up like trivia games are all over the place. Let's take a look instead at one of the worst attempts at those coming from your friendly media giant, the NBC TV News Game. This 1962 release sees players move tokens around the board to answer questions about topics like national capitals or current events, all while under the watchful gaze of famed NBC News anchor Chet Huntley. What could be more exciting than that? Leprosy? Flop your massive copy of the NBC TV News Game on the table at game night and watch in awe as you get a resounding, "Huh?" from your friends. Not only would this be the single most dull experience I could think of from the genre, this game is also going to be extremely difficult due to how old it is. How many of your friends are going to remember the newsworthy current events of 1962? Coco the Clown? On the TV? Who could forget? At the very least, you do have questions that relate to nations' capitals, so those are going to be relevant for new players. You know, if those countries still exist and all. This can be a big aspect to a game's theming, how well that theme can age. The most popular games are timeless. Their themes can be understood no matter what year they were played in. But if your game's theme is built around a specific aspect of your time period, it could end up being aged out, which will have a negative impact on future players' ability to enjoy the game. This is the problem that plagues Power Lunch, the 1994 game that sees players attempting to sit groups of celebrities at lunch tables and come up with wacky scenarios as to why those people are sitting together in order to score points. This may have been a great theme to start, but the game runs into a slight issue nowadays as these are specifically celebrities from 1994. And while some of the people have managed to find ways to keep themselves relevant, there is a good chunk of the roster that are just flat out nobodies to the common man. Most of your rounds are probably going to look like, now hold on, what are Ted Koppel, Oliver North, and Helmut Kohl doing having lunch together? Well, isn't it obvious? Irrelevancy is not the only way a game can be aged out though, as things that were seen as the standard in the past might be looked back on negatively by people of the future. That's right, no more ticky-tack, that wasn't the best idea themes, I know what you're here for, let's get controversial! Travel back with me to 1966 to play a fantastic little title known as What Shall I Be? The exciting game of career girls. This game sees players compete to be the first to become a career girl by collecting the right school, subject, and personality cards to land their dream job. And the jobs on display here are only the most premier in female employment opportunities, like teacher, nurse, actress, ballet dancer, model, and airline hostess. Well, there's all the girl jobs. Go on, take your pick. These obviously didn't age well, but never fear. I'm here to make everything worse. Each job comes with its own school that you will need to go to in order to qualify for it. But they couldn't exactly figure out what people do in order to become models, so F it, send them to the charm school, I guess. In addition to that, you are going to need to have the right personality for your job. But you can not only get positive personality traits like being pretty, strong, or emotional, you can also get negative personality traits like being a slow thinker, clumsy, or overweight. Not a single portion of this thing aged well, which honestly makes it really funny to look at, but what separates this game is that all of its controversy was unintentional. Our remaining games not only knew that they would bring in that controversy, they were probably counting on it to sell. I'm going to read the front of our next game's box word for word and let you guys try to figure out why it's here. Ready? The game where you become a Jewish mother. Get your sons to become doctors. Get your daughters married to doctors. If not, oy vey. I'm surprised this one didn't take off. What am I looking at here? Look at the box! Look at the board! What do you want me to say? Oh, ages 12 and up, a perfect gift for the kids. I'd honestly love to go more in-depth about the game, but there is surprisingly little information online about a 1979 board game called Oy Vey. So what I'm looking at here is pretty much all I have to offer until I can acquire a copy for myself. Even though I don't have as much as I'd like to on Oy Vey, I can offer up plenty of information regarding a certain company we've run into here before. Ladies and gentlemen, Hammerhead Enterprises. Longtime fans of the channel are well acquainted with Hammerhead, as these are the goobers behind everybody's favorite board game brothers, Public Assistance and Capital Punishment. Both of our brothers here carry some great themes to break out at family game night, with Public Assistance being the anti-welfare game made to protest the Carter administration's welfare policies, and Capital Punishment being a pro-death penalty game where the aim is to get all of your criminals sent to death row. Drop these babies off at the family Christmas and sit back and watch the fireworks. Since I've covered both games before, I'll keep this segment brief and focus on the main difference between the two. That being that Capital Punishment is actually a really good game with a controversial theme holding it back, and its older brother, Public Assistance, is just abysmal. Capital Punishment's gameplay is an excellent combination of risk-reward decisions that will test a player's resolve as they attempt to move throughout the board without getting caught, while Public Assistance is an unbalanced mess that relies on luck for the entire experience. Neither of them lasted long in the retail space before being removed from stores for being too controversial. No idea where they got that from. As these games both relied on the shock of their themes to drive their message home, they come with some pretty funny nonsense due to the extreme nature of the situations they present. At the same time, both games also contain really disturbing portions that are guaranteed to ruin the fun of the night as well, so you take the ebbs with the flows. One frame trick again, go! I've kept the Hammerhead section brief since both of those games have gotten their time in the spotlight. And since then, I've uncovered more whack crap games with even more whack crap theming that I hope might stand up to our delinquent duo. Let's get a little more recent by jumping up to 2005. Ha! That was 19 years ago. And a little card game with a very subtle title known as Pimp, the Backhanding. Pimp the Backhanding is a standalone card game where players, quote, mack some hoes and put them to work as you attempt to make the most money over 3 rounds. This is done over 3 phases in each round, which I will now try to explain without using any language that could trigger the age censors. Phase 1, the macking phase. Use your employers to attempt to recruit freelancers to your turf. There are only so many potential employees available though, so you'll have to out-recruit your opponents. If you fail this stage though, you can still get back at them in Phase 2, the backhanding phase. You can now hamper your opponent's completely legitimate business by hampering your opponent's businesswomen. Any laborers that have been dissuaded are unable to make money, so you can use your managers to defend them. Once all the actions have been carried out, the final phase begins. Phase 3, the money laundering phase. Your workforce is now free to carry out the operation, and you can now count the money you made and add it to your score before starting the next round. All throughout the game, you are able to use modifiers or dirty trick cards to affect your score, adding more to the game's strategy element. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is quite the specimen, as it was definitely designed to trigger a negative response from audiences based on this statement included with the rules. But at the same time, it is very easy to tell that a lot of effort and care went into the development of the rules, art direction, and game balance, which makes 2 deep standalone card games wrapped in controversy for depicting women as sex objects released in 2005. How? This is Winch, the drinking man's thinking game, also known as a nightmare for me to censor all these pictures so I don't get my channel assassinated. The Winch deck comes with 52 cards depicting women in various provocative poses and states of undress, and functions in 2 ways, for regular card play and for playing Winch itself. See, each of the Winch cards comes with traditional poker symbols, meaning that these cards can easily be used as a proper deck for any traditional card game whenever the need would arise. Hey, I'm hankering for some hold'em. Anybody got any cards? No! The real meat from these cards comes in the form of the game of Winch itself, which functions as a more complex form of Uno where players compete to get rid of all their cards first. The gold and blue cards each have different functions, and every card carries its own effect that will either assist in getting rid of your cards, aid in adding cards to your opponent's hands, or establishing penalties in an attempt to trip up the other players. A major part of Winch is these passive penalties established by the cards, as the more rules that are added and subtracted by the cards, the more difficult the game is to keep track of. Whoever has the most points at the end of the games loses, and is declared the Winch of the evening, and must pay whatever punishment was agreed upon at the beginning of the sessions, which could be anything. Do 50 push-ups, pay for pizza for everyone, power wash the deck, commit an international incident, whatever the group is feeling at the time, really. Obviously, the main selling point for the game is the classy artwork, which was put together by some guy named Monty Michael Moore, who has also done work for a couple small enterprises like Magic the Gathering, DC Comics, and Lucasfilm, Winch obviously going to the top of that resume. Okay, we're running in circles here. Besides a few stragglers, we've only been able to look at good games with bad themes, but I want straight garbage all throughout. I want a series of games that is not only baffling for how bad the theming is, but equally as confounding when you look at how it's meant to be played. Luckily for you, I have just the company we're looking for, with a small company that specialized in goober activities throughout all of their games, Diplomat Sales Co. I can't find anything on these guys. No year they formed, no year they went out of business, no company records. They sort of just materialized without warning one day. The only things left behind by Diplomat were the 3 games that populated their library, and I think there is no better place to start than by covering their most iconic title first. Diplomat's very first release was a title that many a fan of this channel are already well aware of, the 1969 classic Adultery. Yes, the same game that ravaged the worst of all time tournament is not an only child, having 2 secret younger siblings that follow in their brother's footsteps. But before we get to those, let's take a deeper look into the original title and see what made it so special. Adultery is a party game meant for groups where the object of the game is to spend a good time with 2 different players of the opposite sex. The game takes place over 2 phases. In the first phase, players will each spin the spinner, and where the spinner lands will determine what time token they will get. Each player spins 3 times, collects their tokens, and then places their names into their respective gender's hat. That is when the completely neutral third-party referee, who was apparently here the whole time, starts the second phase. The ref will take 1 name from the male player's hat and 1 name from the female player's hat, and those 2 are now tasked to go to a designated private part of the house where they will now participate in actual real-world adultery until their combined time is over. Mind you, while the actual real-world adultery is occurring in the other room, there is literally nothing for the other players to do. They have to just sit around like, so, Come here often? So, now that you know how to play, don't! This is the single best example you can provide for a game that was made for nobody. The general public is not going to want to play this game due to the literal crime being mentioned as the game's main draw. No thanks, I'm more of a wire fraud guy. So that leaves this game up to people of the swinger variety, except no, it really doesn't. Now granted, I've never been to one of these get-togethers, but I can't imagine that a series of rules and timers being strictly enforced by a neutral third party while all but 2 participants are forced to refrain from any activities until it is their turn are what these people are going for. If it is though, buddy, you are $40 plus shipping away from heaven. Get moving. Our final takeaway from this thing is to keep in mind that the amount of people that have caught an STD due to playing a board game is most certainly greater than 0, so thanks a lot, you trailblazer. But as mentioned before, Adultery is not alone, as 2 other titles were also released under the Diplomat banner. Let's look at the other release from 1969 as Diplomat unveils their new take on a timeless classic, Tac Toe. Does anybody else feel underwhelmed? Yeah, after the absolute behemoth of the last release, a naughty version of Tic-Tac-Toe doesn't quite carry the same punch to the jaw. Some definitive middle child syndrome here. But that doesn't mean it isn't interesting, because when you see that Diplomat sticker, you know this thing is going to have some serious nonsense garbage going on. The game can be played either 1v1 or with even teams, with the box directly stating that up to 16 people can play total. Players line up on each side and light the candle. Please don't put the candle on the sheet, that is a completely different game called Arson. To play, you remove an article of clothing and place it down to mark a square, then your opponent does the same. Play continues until one player gets 3 in a row or a draw occurs. Hey, wait a second, they totally ripped off Connect 4! If you win a round, you get to take a bonus card, which will carry 1 bonus action. But the real benefit is that you get to place that bonus card on a square in lieu of one of your articles next round. Clothing cannot be reused once it has been placed down, and once a player has no clothing left to place, they are declared the loser. The player or team with clothes left is the winner and gets to blow out the candle to signify the game's end. Picture painting time. Someone, somewhere, at some point in time has gone up to their friends and asked, "Hey, do you want to play Tac Toe?" with a straight face, and as much as I hate to be mean to the guy, but they are definitely not friends anymore. So, with 2 of our terrible triple covered, let's head now to the youngest of the 3, being developed in 1970 right before Diplomat vanished off the face of the earth. Our final game is another original creation by the player's choice, Bumps and Grimes. This title more than lives up to the Diplomat name, joining Mr. Bacon's big adventure in the distinguished hall of games that can kill their players, now looking for new members. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. A quick look at the board will tell us what we're dealing with here, and I swear it's not Monopoly. Bumps and Grinds is much simpler, as players maneuver their way around the board while attempting to lose all of their clothing in the process. Yes, I said there. Contrary to the last game, the winner of Bumps and Grinds is the person who loses all of their clothing first, which opens up a whole new level of strategy for anybody looking to win at Bumps and Grinds. You move around the board by rolling the dice and advancing to different spaces, each carrying their own effects. These can range from free spaces to making a certain player strip to moving around the board, or the most interesting option of drawing a card. There are 2 decks possible to draw from, and the cards carry a diverse pool of effects like expected options of forcing other players to drink or lose articles, sending you to the bar, the jail equivalent here, and covering up safe spaces, or more wacky options like tell a joke, do a no, and the false modesty card, which can be used in place of removing an article, an action, may I remind you, that will negatively impact your chances of winning the game. All in all, yes, some goober activity, but nothing quite the level of Adultery. At least that would be the case if not for one component that I have specifically left out until now: the candle. See, just like in Tac Toe, the winner of the game gets to blow out the candle at the end, but this candle is special in 2 major ways that honestly make it one of the worst game components of all time. See, the rules specifically state that the game can only be played by candlelight, and with the candle this small, I highly doubt that you are going to be illuminating this board well enough for everyone to see clearly from all sides. In fact, this rule is so stupid, the two people on the front of the box aren't even obeying it, because just behind this sensor bar, you can very clearly see an active fireplace raging. The only way this candle is lighting up anything is if you put it right on the board, a detail that people who have been paying attention to the board will know as they specifically highlight a place where the candle must rest. Now, let me remind you what this candle looks like. A straight up stick with no restraints placed on this dinky little dish. So your open flame, which is your only source of light, is resting only on its wax structural integrity on top of a highly flammable board, on top of highly flammable carpet, next to highly flammable clothes, which are spread out everywhere. Brother, this thing is going to burn your house down. Membership accepted. The only other noteworthy part of this one is that many copies actually appear to be made by a company called Tac Toe and not Diplomat. So what gives? Well, it appears that the Diplomat Sales Co. wanted to distance themselves from the whole adultery thing, so they decided to switch up their branding and become Tac Co. instead. I am confident that these two are the same, due to the fact that during their swap, Tac Co. used not only the same font, but the same background for their logo. In addition to that, there are copies of this game in the wild with the original Diplomat logo on it, so I'd say it's pretty safe to assume what happened here. Nevertheless, the Diplomat trio reigns supreme, and I've taken notes from our prestigious middle child here for my own board game build. Just add a naughty theme to a beloved game and watch the money pour in. That's why I've begun development on Strip the Campaign for North Africa, guaranteed to set the mood in as little as 15 years. Signing off for Fire Hazards, I am Cam Sandwich. Thank you for watching and have a fantastic day. A special thank you to all my patrons over at the deli. If you'd like to join, every dollar you contribute will go towards getting a copy of TCFNA TDW 40 to 43 that we'll be able to play together. So join the cause today. Flop your massive copy of the TV... can't read this. Forced to refrain from any activities is that... I almost had it. Leprosy? 8th, maybe 9th times the charm?